Good morning and welcome to Entrepreneurs Hour, right here on WRFR 93.3 FM. Every week on Entrepreneurs Hour, we dive into stories of triumphs, challenges, and lessons learned, highlighting how local organizations and individuals are working together to foster a thriving business ecosystem right here in Knox County and beyond. Whether you're starting a business, growing one, or supporting the local entrepreneurial community, this show is exactly for you. Hi, everyone. My name is Chris Austin. I'm your host and president of Ardea, proud sponsor of this show. Ardea is located in Rockport, and we help small businesses and nonprofits with bookkeeping, large-scale accounting, payroll, payment solutions, and tax services. I'm also the president of the Rock Coast Entrepreneurs and a member of the NSBA Leadership Council, representing Maine small business community on a local, state, and national level. I created the show to help entrepreneurs navigate the complexities of running a small business by providing a platform where entrepreneurs can share their journeys and highlight some amazing partners in our region, showcasing the impactful ways they're helping small businesses and entrepreneurs succeed. Let's learn, inspire, and support one another as we continue to build a stronger small business community together. Now, let's get started with today's show. Well, good morning, everyone. I'm excited to get started today. I have a great guest today. We have Alexis here joining us, Alexis Zimba-Kirby. And I'll tell you, I've learned a lot already from her, and she's a pretty smart person here, and I'm excited to have her to share her journey and her experiences for our listeners today. So, Alexis Zimba-Kirby, she is the founder of Jacobson Strategy Creative, and she helps solopreneurs, which is a new term that I've learned. I don't think I've ever heard of it until today. And she helps solopreneurs build brands. And also she's the owner of the Martinsville Market, a self-service farm stand supporting local farmers, and also has a passion for sustainable food system branding and small business growth. So, Alexis, welcome to the show.
Thank you. So excited to be here.
Awesome. So if you could let's just dive right in. So the first segment, what we always do is we always love to dive into the entrepreneurial journey that you've experienced. So Alexis, how did you get started with the business strategy and the food system advocacy? Tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. So I grew up in rural Iowa, and I really wanted nothing to do with agriculture whatsoever. So when I when it was time to go to college, I decided to go to New York University, go to Manhattan, and distance myself basically as much as possible from the food system. So I started studying. Actually, I started as an econ major and realized I was terrible at math, and moved to French, mostly because I wanted to study abroad, and spent a year in Paris, and because I was not very wealthy, found myself working in cafes and restaurants as a poor college student usually does, and kind of got back into food systems that way. And then when I went back to New York after living in Paris to finish out my schooling, New York University had a food systems and food sustainability new part of one of their colleges, and I couldn't get a major in that because I had already gone so far into the French major that I would have had to stay more years, and I didn't have the funding to do that. So I took a minor in food systems, graduated from university, spent more time working in kitchens in New York, mostly bakeries, and then took a job in Maine, actually working for Saltwater Farm, which was a restaurant in Rockport, and through that did a bunch of sourcing for them. So they wanted to bring in, local ingredients, local farms, and Maine is not, we don't have really big farms, so you have to work with a lot of little farms. So I ended up being a person that kind of found all those farms and did outreach for them and brought in the ingredients. So got back into agriculture that way, and then very quickly decided I didn't want to be in a restaurant anymore and wanted to do the farming. So that's how I got back into the sustainable food systems.
So explain what food, because that's another term.
Okay, so food systems are basically how your food gets on your plate. So it's a huge, huge process, and it starts even before the farms. It starts with the seed growers and the seed producers. And we have a couple in Maine, Johnny's Seed, obviously, and then High Mowing in Vermont. But then there's the big ones that produce a lot of the corn seed and soybean seed that's used out in the Midwest. And so that's kind of the beginning of your food system. And then it goes, obviously, to the farmers, and then from the farmers you have the processors and the trucking and then you have the distributors. So they can either be wholesale distributors or like a grocery store distributor that's direct to consumer. You have your corner markets, you've got your general stores in Maine. Everything about how food gets from where it's grown to where it's consumed. So that's your whole food system. It's really a broad topic.
Wow.
Yeah.
I had no idea. That's awesome. All right. So we live the food system every single day, don't we?
We do.
So let's talk a little bit about the Martinsville Market, because obviously that kind of goes hand in hand with that. So let's talk a little bit about that. And why did you do it? And how's it going? And so tell us about that entire journey.
Okay, so Martinsville Market, I started about 4 years ago, and it's a small retail farm stand in Martinsville, which is on the St. George Peninsula. And I also grow cut flowers for the market. And how did it start? I had been working in agriculture since graduating college and moved to Maine and started working in agriculture. And agriculture is a very time-intensive business. So if you are working on a farm, you generally don't have set hours. You're kind of just there until the work is done. And so I had worked on a couple different farms, managed Beth's Farm Market for a few years, and then I started to grow my own family. So I had my first daughter and put her in daycare and started having to leave the farm at a certain time, and my time wasn't so malleable anymore. And then I had my second daughter, and at that point, my income from being a farm worker was not matching the output that I would need to pay for childcare. So I decided to step back from being a farm employee. I had been doing some other side business freelancing on the side, so that was kind of what I fell back on. And then really just wanted my own place. So shortly after my second daughter was born, which let me tell you is not the time to start a business, but I did it anyways, and I started Martinsville Market, and we're going into our 4th year. It's going really well. I would say last year was our biggest year yet, and by our, I mean mine, because it's just me. And I sell lots of different food products from Maine farms, Maine businesses, but I've also expanded to kind of the general Northeast with a focus on bringing in really high quality ingredients and food that are sustainable and taste really good and target not just tourists who are coming here, which is a big market, but also the local community. So what do people down in St. George, where it takes you 25-30 minutes to get to the grocery store, what do we need if you just want to run out and need to get something to make a quick dinner? What can I have for you that makes that process really easy while you're still supporting the local businesses?
That's awesome. So you used all those previous contacts, all those farms, and then you brought it to the St. George Peninsula, which it's a really awesome. Being that somebody lives on the St. George Peninsula, you're right. It's a journey to get off the peninsula.
Well, we are technically a food desert down on the St. George Peninsula because we don't have any we don't have any grocery stores. So we only have the general store, which is wonderful. But as anyone who lives in St. George or probably any of the peninsulas or island communities knows, that's a very limited selection. They focus mostly on shelf-stable goods that, and they cater a lot to the tourist population. So I really wanted something that would cater to everybody and still be very fresh and healthy. As a mom, I try to, get my kids to eat healthier. And so I didn't want to just have a whole bunch of canned goods, although I do carry canned goods, but I really wanted to make something that was fresh and would let you cook just a whole meal from what you found right in there.
Awesome. So how's it going? Is it been?
It's going. So we've seen really exponential growth, I would say, pretty much every year. The hardest year so far was not last year, it was the year before, and it was the rainy summer. So if everyone can remember back to the summer where it rained the entire summer and we didn't see any sun, just about all your farmers almost went bankrupt. I can tell you that. We struggled because crops weren't growing. We struggled because people don't go out when it rains, and so they don't go and stop by a roadside stand, and they don't go and pick flowers. They stay inside where it's, nice, and the tourists don't come. So that summer was our hardest year. I really did think about shutting down after that, and I'm so, so glad that I didn't, because last year when we had relatively nice weather, I had my best year yet, and I'm so excited to grow into this year.
That's fantastic to hear. So is that open year round or?
Nope. So we are open May. So I open on Mother's Day weekend, the weekend of Mother's Day, and then I usually stay open through Halloween and then close for just a small break until Thanksgiving, and then I open like a holiday market from Thanksgiving to Christmas Eve.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah. So this year I am considering not having that short fall break, but we'll see how it goes.
Okay. Great. So let's talk a little bit about, what inspired you to create a Jacobson Strategy and Creative, and tell us a little bit about that business.
Yeah, so this is my other business because I have a problem and I really like starting businesses. So
and they call that being a serial entrepreneur.
It's a serial entrepreneur,
and
it's a real thing, and I am definitely one of them. So if you don't know, starting businesses can be slightly expensive. So instead of bringing all these ideas that I had to life, I decided, well, how else could I get this, kind of rush from starting these businesses? Well, I can help other people start these businesses. So A Jacobson Strategy and Creative was born from wanting to help other people start their own business or take their business full time. I had lots of friends who were doing really great side hustles. I mean, just amazing photographers, painters, cleaners, financial professionals, consultants, construction people. I mean, we have so many people that do multiple jobs in Maine and have a side hustle, and I really wanted to help them make that side hustle just a little bit more professional so they could, one, automate systems and save themselves time, and two, get the branding and the marketing on point so that they could lay a path for that growth to being full-time. So A Jacobson Strategy and Creative does branding based on strategy. So based on your competitors, your target customers, and then we do web design as well as taking you and getting your systems completely set up. So what do I mean by systems? I mean your email marketing, your booking, your payment processing, I don't actually set up your legal entity, but I will definitely direct you on how to do that. So just getting all those systems in place so that your business functions really smoothly.
That is awesome. It is so needed. because in the state of Maine, we have a lot of small businesses. And I saw your website and I looked over it, and, and it's like, you can go right into this and become, financially stable, but it's a lot of work. And why is branding so important for people? And we're probably we're gonna deep dive into this more here shortly, but it's on my mind.
Branding is so important. And when we say branding, everyone probably thinks immediately about colors and fonts and a pretty logo that you put on your packaging. But it's a lot deeper than that. Branding is your foundation of your sales strategy. So when we go into a branding project, I'm not immediately looking at your favorite colors. I'm looking at what colors are going to give people the correct impression of your business, the color psychology behind your business. What sort of mood do we want to evoke from your target audience? What does your target audience like? What are they craving? So we have to lay all that foundation before we can even begin to have a discussion about what font best suits your business. And then there's more too of just like, well, is this font actually readable on a website? Is this font something that, is versatile so people can actually consume the content that you're putting out, depending on, are you going to do direct mail? Are you just going to do social media? Are you going to do, so we have to have all of that kind of not set in stone, but we have to have at least thought about pretty much all aspects of your business before we can even begin the branding. And if you don't, you're just going to end up doing a rebrand a couple of months or years into your business.
That's expensive.
Mm-hmm.
You have all that intellectual property out there, and you got to replace it with new intellectual property and
intellectual property, new business cards, new packaging. Maybe you even put a logo on your truck. Now you got to redo that. I mean, branding, rebranding, while sometimes necessary, can be expensive. So my goal is, let's set your business foundation up for success so that instead of doing a rebrand on year 2, we can wait to do a rebrand until year like 7 or 10, when you really are at that point where you're having that business growth and expanding, and your original brand probably isn't going to suit you at that point. But then you have the finances to kind of take that on.
Yeah, absolutely. So, like, how do you balance having two? I think that they probably complement each other just because of like branding and stuff like that, because you have to use your own model, I assume. So like, but these are two like totally different types of businesses.
These are totally
this is the main story. Like, people have side hustles, but this is not a side hustle. This is a business for you.
This is a business for me, and I have these are two totally different types. So I have a retail business and I have a service-based business, and those are very different. They have different marketing strategies, different financial strategies, lots of differences. The way I balance it, I think the seasonality of the retail business, the fact that in the winter time it's quieter, and I still have to get product in and do some financials and things like that. But Martinsville Market in the wintertime is, now that I've done it for 4 years, relatively easy for me to just put on autopilot. And that's when my creativity with A. Jacobson really comes through. When we have a snowstorm and it's just me with my computer and I have my candle and my fire going, that's really when my creative juices start to flow, and I just get in this zone of working on these branding projects and how people can run their businesses.
Awesome. I think you just gave me a little inspiration of what to ask people in the future. It's what is your creative space? Thank you for sharing that. That's a really cool thing. And, I think about my creative space, and it's like the shower. Like,
oh yeah.
Like I will call my wife and I'm like, hey, write down these ideas for me. And she's like, what? And I'm like, please write these ideas for me. This is This is gold right now. This is
Okay.
me just thinking about these things.
So, little anecdote. When I was in college, I used to have to write essays, right? In college, you write a lot of essays. So I would actually set my computer up to record when I'm not a video, just audio recording, but record when I was in the shower because I'd have all these great essay ideas, and basically I would outline my entire college essays in the shower and
That's so
then
funny.
go and write them, and I did that multiple times.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, we're going to transition to the next segment, which is branding and business growth for solopreneurs. I am saying that correctly.
I think so.
Solopreneurs.
I did not coin the term, but I think, yes, solopreneurs.
All right. This is going to be a new term I'm using because it's fantastic. What are the biggest mistakes solopreneurs make when launching their brand?
Well, we already talked about one, not having thought through the whole business before you start on the branding. The second mistake that I see solopreneurs make is that they want to throw it all out right at the beginning. They want to do all the things they've ever thought of in this business, and they want to do them all right away. So, if you are a service provider, maybe you clean houses. Well, you're also interested in organization. Well, that's great. You can do that once you get your systems set up for cleaning houses. Don't try to set up both services at the same time, cleaning houses and organization. Just do one thing and get your systems in place and get your customer base and your lead funnel and everything for that set up before you move to your next thing that you're interested in, your next service that you want to provide.
Yeah. Because I know that a lot of people, they really struggle with, that they just, and it's especially as an entrepreneur, like you have all these great ideas and you want to put them into action. You're just like the most impatient person in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say entrepreneurs entrepreneurs are, they're, solopreneurs. I'm sorry. I'm looking at this. But just thinking about it is that next thing you know, they have 10 things that they do, but they haven't mastered all 10. So, they say is like, basically is you have all these things going, but you're truly not an expert in any of these. You're just making things happen.
Yeah. And not only are you not an expert, you're not marketing them well, you're not having the systems in place so that you can repeat that process for another customer and get similar results. So you're really doing yourself a disservice when you try to scale too fast and try to offer too much right away.
Yeah, because scaling is something that you have to be patient with, because a lot of folks, and I think that's why entrepreneurs, they just love creating. It's because that excitement of the launch, right? There's nothing like that feeling, because you start at zero and you're moving forward, so it's always up, 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 and up, and that's when you plateau or start to flatten out a little bit. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but people freak out about that. They miss that, the high of, or the excitement of that journey. So, just going back into this, so the role of branding, client experience, and digital presence in the business success plan. So I know we've talked a little bit about that. Can you expand on a little bit more about that? The client experience. So I know testimonials are a really big thing. So let's talk about that. Why are testimonials or sharing client experiences so important?
I love talking about client experience, so we can really dig into this. Testimonials are what's going to establish trust between you and the people that you're trying to market to, the people that are interested in your services. There are so many businesses out there that don't have the consumer's, best wishes at heart. They don't really care about, is this product actually helping the consumers? They just want to put out this product and hopefully it sells and they make some money, but it doesn't actually work. And I'm sure we've all bought something off of a Facebook ad or off of an Amazon ad that wasn't quite what it was presented to be. So the testimonials from people that have been through your business or have purchased your product is that next layer of trust, saying, this product is legit, this is actually what's going to get you the results that it says it's going to get.
Awesome. When we're discussing this more, the digital presence, this is where you have all these different platforms. In your opinion, like, where should people really start?
Well, it's different for every business, but there's a few things that we can keep in mind. In terms of where you should start, I would say you need to focus on building your website and your email list. And here's why. Social media is great for getting new eyes on your product, for bringing that awareness to people, but you don't own social media. I'm sure everyone remembers, was it a month ago or 2 months ago when TikTok disappeared for a day? Think about if you were using TikTok as your main platform to reach new consumers and even to communicate with your clients, and then all of a sudden, boom, gone. And I've heard so many stories from especially service providers who were booking through Instagram, and then one day their Instagram got hacked and boom, gone. They can never get it back. So really focus on the stuff that you actually own. You own your website. You own your email list. Nothing is going to just come in and wipe that out. And that's how you're going to actually build a sustainable foundation for your business.
So what are your thoughts? So do you talk to your clients about paid advertising, and like, what are your thoughts on that? Because I think a lot of people get overwhelmed about, like, how much money do I invest? Like, can you just expand on that a little bit?
It depends on your so everything is really specific to your business. And again, that's why we have to get your foundations in order before we start working on, your marketing and your advertising. But for most people, when you're starting your business, unless you have a big, like, personal following, you are probably going to need to do some paid social media ads. That being said, you don't want to just go in there and start making some posts or boosting some posts and throwing money at the wall is what we call it, right? You're not really sure what your audience is. You're not really sure. You're making an ad, but it doesn't have a clear call to action. It doesn't have a clear follow-up. That you're just throwing money at the wall. So we need to have a strategy in place before you do some paid advertising. And if your strategy is well done, you can get away with spending, minimal amounts. I'm talking $50, $100, $200 a month at first to just get the awareness there, which is not a huge advertising expense. Other types of paid advertising that for Maine businesses really can work are the ones we kind of forget about. So direct mail really actually these days can be extremely targeted, and it can be part of an omni-channel campaign where you're doing direct mail, but also social media and paid ads and maybe even some email marketing. So that's, I think, if you are a location-based business, you should look into some direct mail campaigns. They can be relatively affordable and very targeted. Radio advertising is another one that in Maine is surprisingly still effective. Beth's Farm Market, for instance, did a bunch of radio. They still do a bunch of radio advertising, and we would get a lot of people in there that says, "Oh, I heard about you on the radio." And, in other geographies like New York City, probably not so effective. But in Maine, those things are still working, and if you have a good strategy in place, can be really important. The last strategy I'll touch on is SEO, search engine optimization.
Oh.
This is a big topic. but it's one that we should at least touch on. And again, it really boils down to knowing your audience's pain points, knowing what they're searching for on the internet, knowing what they're interested in, and then strategically using those phrases or keywords in your website, your marketing, your even your social media now is searchable through Google. So that's a big topic, but just something to keep, in the back of your mind, especially if you're, going to have a blog or something. You really need to get those pain points down and start baking those keywords into your platform.
That's the key right there.
Yeah.
Yep, just being able to do that. Awesome. We're going to switch a little bit, and we're going to get into the discussion around and just really build off of what we had initially kicked off with the sustainable food systems and local economies. So, so you created the Martinsville Market, which is awesome, and I'm so glad that you're continuing doing that. That's so important. But let's expand on that. Like, I know food insecurity is a real issue in our area. And, we have some great resources like AIO and so how do we focus on, creating these local food systems and keep it sustainable and affordable also? So can you tell us a little bit about that? I know that's a big topic.
That is a big topic, and I'm going to just straight up tell you, I don't have the answer. But I think the most important part is just buying local. So it could be from me at Martinsville Market. It could be from someone who has, the little cooler outside with their eggs, and their eggs are $5 a dozen. And right now at the grocery store, eggs are $6 or $7 a dozen. So there can be ways when you're supporting direct to consumer that are cheaper, and then that money is probably just going to be spent. It could even be spent back at your own business. I've had that happen before where I buy something from, one of the fishermen, and then they come into my market and they're now giving me that money back. So it kind of just creates this whole local economy that is going to help everyone in your community, even, if they're not directly involved in it.
So true.
Yeah. And I do, at my market, try to keep, I have products that go across the price spectrum, right? Like there's some things that I just really try to keep cheap. Ground beef is one of them. I buy my ground beef from a couple different places, Grace Pond Farm, Misty Brook, and I really try to sell them pretty much at what I buy them for. I mark it up just a tiny, tiny bit, really to just cover the gas that I spend to go to those places, just because it's such a staple, and it's something that should not be unattainable for local people. Now, I also sell lamb in my market, and that lamb is considerably more expensive. That's not something that I see really as a staple. That's something you would get as, a fancy dinner for a dinner date or something like that. So I really do try to have that price spectrum in my market, and that's something that's really important to me as a business owner.
So why are local food systems so important to community resilience?
Well, we saw this in COVID, didn't we?
Mm-hmm.
So if you remember back to COVID, there was a run on toilet paper and dried goods and a couple other things. And recently there's been a run on eggs with the avian flu that's affecting mostly egg producers in the southern United States, but is starting to work its way north. And so as we see these big shifts in supply chains and in distribution, unless we have a sustainable and really strong local food system, we can start to run out of things, or things can be way more expensive than we would want them to. So having that local food system in place is just kind of that safety net of not only economic security, because businesses in the area are spending money back and forth, but also just that supply chain is insulated to these broader effects that we really can't control.
Mm-hmm. Do you encourage people to buy their produce and can, and so that way they can keep it for a long period of time? Can you talk a little bit about that a little bit?
Yeah, so, I mean, that would be great. And if you're into canning and preserving, go for it. I am so proud of you. Man, I do not have the time to do that. I have
Speaking truths right now.
been there before. I
Uh-huh.
have been into it and put up. In fact, I think I just ran out of tomato sauce that I put up, pre-children. But as a mom of 3 littles and running two businesses, I don't have time to do that. So what do I do instead? I use the freezer a lot. There's a lot of really fast ways to just, if you have extra really anything, you can freeze it. And I also just buy local products that are already shelf staples. So there's a lot of Maine businesses that are doing dried goods. There's some canned goods that are coming out now. There's the freezer products like the blueberries, or there's a Maine company that's doing broccoli frozen. So there's some more things that are already done for you. And I think that you don't have to do everything yourself. And that's a really important part of Martinsville Market. I don't grow everything that I sell. I don't make all the food that I sell because that's impossible. And it's not spreading that wealth throughout the community. Instead, it's just, if I grew everything, then I'd just bring all the money in and it would be mine. But no, instead I can buy from a couple bakeries in the area and resell their products, and they're getting paid and I'm getting paid, and it's closer to you, so you don't have to drive as far.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of just a win-win for everyone.
What are your thoughts on the industry of I forgot the name of the company, but they sell like ugly fruit and vegetables.
Yeah.
My wife got trapped into it.
So the what are they called?
The uglies, I think
I don't know.
they even have potato chips called uglies because
Yeah.
it's from the ugly sweet potatoes.
So this is such a fun thing. These companies are basically dealing with a real problem. So the real problem is there's a ton of waste in the American food system, and a lot of it is for superfluous reasons. So your strawberry is not pretty. Your apple is not perfectly round. There's a lot of different reasons why food is thrown out in the United States. And a lot of that happens at the farm level, where we separate, these potatoes are retail, these potatoes go to the wholesaler to be made into mashed potatoes or whatever. So those companies are really trying to deal with that issue of, even though it doesn't look perfect, it's still perfectly edible. However, I really take issue with the idea of direct mailing produce all across the United States to individual households.
Share why.
There's a lot that goes into packaging that. So it's just a lot of waste. And even if you're doing it sustainably with like recycled packaging and everything, you're still driving the trucks. You're still putting all that packaging together. There's a warehouse somewhere where someone's standing there picking orders and putting them in boxes and putting in the cold packs, and then you get it shipped to you, and then sometimes it's still cold and then other times it's not, and then that food goes to waste. So I think we just really need to be mindful about, is it really helpful to have this food shipped directly to me? And maybe it is. If you're buying in large quantities, maybe that's for you. But if you're just doing your weekly grocery shop, but it's being mailed to you instead of you going to buy it from a local business, just think about, one, the environmental impact of that, but two, the community impact of that. Because now, instead of spending your dollars with a Maine-based business, you're spending with your dollars with, it could be based in the United States, but it might not even be based in the United States. You might be sending your money overseas unknowingly, but that's a big a big problem because these local businesses need your support.
Agreed, 100%. Very well said. So we're going to now transition into advice and takeaways for entrepreneurs. All right. So as part of the show, we always love to talk to you, and it's that vulnerable moment that we've all experienced as entrepreneurs. What's the biggest lesson that you've experienced or that you've learned, maybe the hard way?
Get your bookkeeping in order.
Oh.
Seriously. So many solopreneurs and especially side hustlers start their business and their business is just an extension of themselves. And I am guilty of this too. I am not perfect here. So you're spending your money on your business and then money's coming in for your business, but it's just going directly into your personal account. And that might work fine for, the first year when you only have maybe a couple $1,000s in sales if you're starting really small. But then you start to scale up and maybe now you owe some taxes on that money and it's really hard to separate out what was actually a business expense or what was business profit versus what was just personal profit. Or maybe you went into debt for your business, but you financed that on a personal credit card instead of a business loan. And now when your business goes maybe bankrupt, then that's going to just come back to you personally instead of just dissolving that business. So, and there's more to it, like your finances for your own business knowledge too. Is like you could be making a profit, but unless you have your bookkeeping set up, maybe your cash flow in certain months of the year is not good. And instead of just being like, well, man, these $35 overdraft fees are really adding up. And why is this happening? I'm making money. If you have your bookkeeping and your finances in order, you can anticipate that and shift purchases or shift marketing strategies or just obtain a line of credit, because sometimes that's what you got to do, just to avoid those extra fees that would be incurred otherwise.
Yeah, because I think that's what happens. So, in my world, my company, that's what we do. We do bookkeeping, and it's a message that we talk about is that outsourcing is not a bad thing. Like, it is a great thing because unless you're professionally trained, like, I joke about this, and my team will tell everyone as well, I am not a bookkeeper, okay? All right, when I was on my own, I did my bookkeeping once a year, and that was in October, okay, of the following year when I was on extension, all right? And I had to do my bookkeeping, all right? But I joke about that, but people do it all the time. But also, too, I'm an old banker, so bankers talk about balancing your checkbook. Nobody balances their checkbook anymore. Everything's all electronic, so you look at your available and you're like, okay, I can spend it. Well, running your business is totally different because you can't always plan on when your income's coming in. So before, I always had a paycheck. I know when I'm getting paid. I know exactly when I'm getting paid. I know my cash flow. But in a business, it's based off of historical data. It's about cash flow. It's being able to know your ins and your outs, your accounts payables, your account receivables. And so many people they operate out of what I call the checkbook, which is basically, what do I have for available credit? Oh, yeah. Or available cash. All right, I can write that check, or I can go ahead and buy that thing. And you're like, ooh, I didn't realize that. I forgot I have this expense that always comes up this time of year, and having that is so important. Key advice for someone wanting to turn their passion into a business, because on your website, you talk about that side hustle.
Yeah, so my big advice for someone looking to take their side hustle full-time or even just to turn it into a real business that maybe you still work a W-2 job, but this is a real business and you're going to treat it as such, is to really do so. Get your competitor analysis, get your consumer persona, get your branding in place, get a website, start building your email list, get your social media set up, get your permits, whatever licenses you might need for that specific business, get your banking set up, get a resale certificate if you know that you're going to be reselling product. So just start to treat it as a real business and automate whatever you can. So your booking should be done through an automated system. I don't want to see you emailing or texting someone just to make an appointment. That's going to just eat you up, and you're never going to be able to scale if you're trying to respond to all of your inquiries via DM. Start being a little more professional and collecting deposits. So a lot of times, especially for some of the more common side hustles, photography, cleaning, things like that, people will set a time that the service is supposed to take place, and then both parties agree to be there, and then you show up as the service provider, and your client has ghosted. They're gone. They're not there. Well, if you had taken a deposit at the time of booking and maybe even put in a contract in place, then you would still be covered. You would be paid for that time that it took you to drive out there just by that deposit. So it's really important to start to put some of those practices in place, because unfortunately, not everyone is going to live up to their best intentions all the time. People, whether they don't value your time or whether something actually comes up and they're just too embarrassed to say it, they might not show up, and you still need to be covered for that, because this is a business and you deserve to be paid for your time.
Yeah, very, very, very good advice right there. What are some of the, because I know a lot of people, their first entrepreneurial journey may be with a partner, a friend, and this happens a lot.
This happens a lot.
So what's your first piece of advice? And
well, I have to say I've never done this professionally because I am too stubborn to go into business with anybody else. However, from what I have seen, business can make even the best of friends or your significant other turn sort of nasty. So if you're going to go into business with someone, it can also be great, but just cover your butt. So start out with contracts, go to a contract lawyer, get an actual document written up, and think about the worst case scenario being, well, what if one of you wants to exit the business but the other one doesn't? How are you guys going to handle that? What if there's a big decision such as maybe it's purchasing a new space for your business and one of you wants to do it and the other one doesn't? How are you going to handle that? Who's putting different amounts of equity into the business and keeping track of that and making that formal instead of just, oh, well, I paid the electric bill, but I paid for the inventory. So really treat it as a business. Get yourself some legal help. I know it's frustrating to pay the lawyers. They're giant fees, but they do know what they're doing. And sometimes you just got to pay for that expertise.
Because sometimes, if you don't like it or not, something could happen to your friend. And next thing you know, you're in business with their spouse.
Oh, I never considered that. That's so bad.
Yes, but that's the reality. Is if you don't have the right agreement in place, that's exactly what's going to happen. And I'm sorry, I love some of my wife's friends, but but I'm sure that they probably would not want to be in business with me. It's just because I'm not my wife, and vice versa. So that's a really good point that I'd like to bring up from time to time. And what's a piece of advice that you would tell your younger self?
The biggest piece of advice I would tell my younger self is to just do it. There's always going to be naysayers. Sometimes those naysayers are part of your family, and sometimes you just need to push past that. Ask yourself, are they really bringing up a valid point that there's some part of my business idea that I need to address? Or are they bringing that from a place of insecurity because they're worried that you might be more successful than them, or you might not have as much time for them as you used to? So it's important to not be held back by what others think you should be doing, and to just, if you have a dream, make a plan and then go for it.
That's awesome. All right, I'm going to go into my favorite segment, which is speed question.
Oh boy.
Okay, so for listeners, this is when we get to know Alexis beyond business. Okay. And so the role of this is the first thing that comes to mind. Okay. Just remember, no swearing. Okay. Morning person or night owl?
Morning.
Okay. Go-to comfort food?
Ice cream.
Okay. Favorite way to unwind after a busy day?
Netflix and chill.
Love it. One book or podcast you'd recommend to entrepreneurs?
Oh.
Or solopreneurs?
Cal Newport. I can't think of the name of his book, but it's about productivity and time management.
Oh, that is a critical thing, isn't it? If you could have dinner with with any historical figure, who would it be?
Probably Martin Luther King.
Okay. Best piece of advice you've ever received?
Oh, that is tricky. I don't know. Make a cash flow analysis is what's coming to mind recently. Sorry.
It's all good. It's awesome. All right. Cash flow analysis is so important. It really is. That's funny. All right. So we're, thank you very much.
You're
and
welcome.
so how can our listeners and our viewers connect with A. Jacobson Strategy Creative in Martinsville Market?
Sure. So if you are looking for local foods in the St. George Peninsula, or if you want to shop online, you can go to www.martinsvillemarket.com or look us up on Facebook or Instagram at Martinsville Market. If you are interested in taking your side hustle full time, in rebranding, in getting a website out there, or in reinventing your client experience systems, look me up, ajacobson.co or ajacobson.biz.strategy on Instagram.
Alexis, thank you so much for joining us today. And we talk about the side hustle. We've had previous guests on that talked about, especially in Maine, we are side hustlers. It's expensive to live here, and you have to sometimes do more to be able to supply food and resources for you and your family and what have you. So it's so important to have someone like you in our community, and I can't wait I hope that you could be a guest maybe for the Rock Coast Entrepreneurs and be able to talk to other solopreneurs as well as other entrepreneurs that are out there. So we will make sure that we'll share those links on our YouTube channel as well as our Facebook update when we have this all done. So listeners and viewers, we're here every single Tuesday morning from 7 to 8 a.m. on WRFR 93.3 FM. You can live stream us. You can listen to us in this Rockland area, as well as we have our YouTube channel. The Entrepreneurs Hour is a byproduct of the Rock Coast Entrepreneurs. And just an update about the Rock Coast Entrepreneurs, while I have just a couple more minutes here, is that we have created some Facebook events. So now the first and third Thursday will now be in our community. Everyone will be able to see it on the community calendar, which is really important. If you're an entrepreneur or someone who supports an entrepreneur or someone who's actually looking to become an entrepreneur, it is so important to be surrounded by other entrepreneurs and people that are in small business, because the number one thing that we had talked about this before the show started is that people feel like they're alone when they're an entrepreneur, and you are not. You have a community that is willing to help and be able to do those things. So thank you again, Alexis, for joining us. Thank you so much, listeners. And thank you very much to sponsors. Alexis had mentioned this earlier today. Radio is so important, especially in our community. And a little station, this nonprofit, 93.3 WRFR, is a wonderful way for you to be able to do that at a local level. It's less than $400 a year to sponsor. You'll be on the radio at least once, if not many times in the day. So what a great way to be able to create exposure, but also support a local radio station such as this. And I would just say is that there's lots of availability for programming. So if you have an idea for some programming, you should definitely reach out to the station, because we would love to have more folks doing that. And there's just some really exciting things happening in our world. So, all right. So I'm looking forward to next week. So be sure to follow our Rock Coast Entrepreneurs Facebook page to be able to catch up and be able to see who's going to be on our show next week. Have yourselves a wonderful week, everyone. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.